Sinclair Community College is a large, urban, metropolitan community college serving tens of thousands of students in the Dayton area and beyond. But just exactly how and when did Sinclair Community College begin? Well, Sinclair Community College traces its history back to the man of its namesake, David Sinclair. Sinclair was born in Scotland on May 27, 1850, to Thomas and Elizabeth Sinclair. They would later immigrate to Canada, in Hamilton, Ontario. Because his family didn't strike it rich in Canada, David had to leave school at age 12 and go to work. He worked at several different jobs: farming, gardening, printing, flax raising, and finally at 15, he was apprenticed to a baker. At this point in his life, he was also involved in the Hamilton, Canada YMCA, where he became a leader. At the age of 20 in 1870, he was appointed secretary of the Hamilton YMCA. 4 years later, in 1874, at a convention hosted by the Dayton YMCA, the board members of the Dayton YMCA, who were looking for a director at that time, were so impressed by Sinclair that they decided to offer him the job, and they invited him to become general secretary of the Dayton YMCA in 1874. And when he accepted, the history of his involvement with the Dayton YMCA and therefore later the Sinclair Community College would begin. And this is how. Sinclair was highly interested in education because he knew that only about 1% of young men in the country at that time went to college, while only 3 went to high school. The earliest record of Sinclair's interest in vocational education is in an article he wrote in 1844 about, believe it or not, this is the way they talked back then, about the tramp problem in Dayton. In response to a sheriff's announcement that homeless people would no longer be given shelter in the jail, many quote-unquote tramps were coming to the YMCA, and they didn't have places to stay. On a cold winter's night, David himself disguised himself as a homeless man to find out how hard it would be to get a shelter. The deputy at the jail let him in because it was so cold, but told him not to come back anymore. Upstairs, he found 13 men, and they chatted all night around a stove, and he learned a lot about the problems of homelessness and undereducated adults, and used this in his career to help develop Sinclair College. At first, his suggestions to start evening classes for young men were rebuffed by YMCA trustees, and after several years of rebuff and discouragement, Sinclair, the man who could, was able to persuade the board that his philosophy of fitting the needs of young men and businesses was the approach to take. So Sinclair set about the town, asking business owners, foremen, and finally people on the work floor what were their educational needs. Dayton was a heavy industry town at this time, and Sinclair was concerned about the numbers of young men out of work. It was evident to him that the policy of education to be adopted would fit the local need, which primarily at that time was technical and vocational. After finally convincing the Board of Trustees that there was a dire need in Dayton, the first 3 classes in freehand drawing, mechanical drawing, and arithmetic were organized and offered shortly after the building was dedicated in February of 1887, enrolling 55 original students. At this time, night classes, which these were almost unheard of, if not completely unheard of. While the idea of night classes was new to many, and that first year was still small, the enrollment took off, as did the idea. In the spring of 1903, enrollment had jumped to 656, and the numbers have increased ever since. The classes were so popular that eventually Sinclair outgrew the first location, and David Sinclair set about to raise the money, which he did, for a new building at the location where Dave Hall Plaza currently stands. The popularity of the programs had increased so much, though, that soon, by around the turn of the century, Sinclair was looking to build yet another building to house the campus. However, he would not see this dream come true. In 1903, at the age of 52, Sinclair was returning home from a vacation to Oregon to obtain rest ordered by his doctor. While Daytonians were shocked and saddened at Sinclair's untimely passing, his vision inspired others to move ahead with his work. In 1908, the school opened up at 3rd and Ludlow, which is now the Dayton City Hall building. Although he's been gone for more than a century now, Sinclair's willingness to find out what businesses need employees to know still goes on many of the technical programs that Sinclair Community College offers to this very day. David Sinclair, a man before his time with a vision Daytonians benefit from to this very day.